Today's lesson goes over section 7.3 on factoring. So to start the lesson in class, I asked everyone to find the lengths of the generic rectangle given the area of the rectangle. So pause the video and see what you come up with. Hopefully you thought about it and came up with the factors 10, 10, 6, and 3. So notice 10 times 10 gives you 100, 10 times 6 is 60, 10 times 3 is 30, and 3 times 6 is 18. Here is another one for you to try. So notice this time we do have variables included. So once again, go ahead and pause the video to see what you come up with. Since the area of this box is x squared, the only two factors that would work are x squared and 1 and x. But looking at the other rows and columns, we have to choose the factors x and x to make this work. So that tells us that this must then be 4, since x times 4 is 4x, and this must be 2. And we can check since 2 times 4 gives us 8. So now our side lengths are x plus 2 and x plus 4. And go ahead and try one more. So pause the video and see if you can find the lengths of the rectangle given the area. So this time, we know that 6 and 1 are both factors of 6 and 2 and 3. So which is it? Well, if we're looking at this whole column, then the one that would make the most sense is to use 3. And since they both share an x factor, then 3x is the factor of that column. And then looking at this row, has to be 2x. And we know that since 2x times 3x is 6x squared. So that leaves us with this blank is 2, since 2x times 2 is 4x, and then this has to be 1 to make this all work. So our factors are 3x plus 2 and 2x plus 1. So notice in this case, we were given the area, the whole area, and we were trying to find the side lengths, aka the factors. So that leads us into the lesson for today on factoring. At this point, you will need the notes for section 7.3. So what we learned in 7.2 was the idea of multiplying polynomials, or in this case specifically, two binomials, right? So these are our factors, aka our side lengths, and we multiply them to create our product, aka the area of our rectangle. Today, we are going to look at reversing this process. So now we want to start with the product and apply factoring to get our factors. But one of the most important things is what is going on in between. So when we multiply, we know one way to do that is to distribute this 2x to the 3x and 2. So that gets us 6x squared plus 4x, and then distribute the 3 to the 3x and the 2 as well, and that gets us 9x and 4. So notice in the middle, if we were to add those like terms together, it leads us to the final product. But if we're factoring, the reverse is also going to be true. We're actually trying to break up this middle term of 13x to help us figure out what our factors are. So in example 1, we are starting with the area or product 6x squared plus 13x plus 6. When it comes to polynomials of degree 2, we generally write them in this format. So notice the number in front of x squared is identified as a, the number in front of x is identified as b, and the number at the end, which is the constant, is identified as c. So in example 1, a is 6, b is 13, and c is 6. The reason we identify these is we're trying to find the two key numbers, aka how are we breaking apart this 13x to fill in the rest of our rectangle. And that helps us determine what are the side lengths. So a pattern that emerges is that the diagonals of this rectangle will always multiply to the same thing. So we can take this 6 and this 6, which are just a and c, and multiply them to tell us that our key numbers here and here also multiply to get 36. But we know that these two numbers also have to add to get 13, which is just the value of b. So those two numbers are 9 and 4, making the rest of this rectangle 9x and 4x. So from here, we can find the side lengths, aka find the factors. So our factors are 3x and 2, or plus 2, and then 2x plus 3. So we'd say, or write that out just like this. So remember, we're just breaking up the negative 14x, and those two numbers have to multiply to 45 and add to negative 14. So that gets us negative 9 and negative 5. So what is now inside of our rectangle adds up to what we originally started with, which is x squared minus 14x plus 45. That allows us now to find the dimensions, aka the side lengths. So we have x, x, negative 5, negative 9. Therefore, our final factors are x minus 5 times x minus 9. Now looking at example 3, so we are starting with 3x squared minus 2x minus 5. Our value of a is 3, b is negative 2, and c is negative 5. So our key numbers must multiply to negative 15 and add to negative 2. Because remember, we are just trying to break up this negative 2x. So those two numbers are negative 5 and 3. Once we've filled in the rest of our rectangle, we can factor and find the side lengths. So this has to be 3x since that is the common factor among those two boxes, and then that would make this x, this 1, and this negative 5. So our factors are 3x minus 5 and x plus 1. And example 4, we're starting with y squared plus y minus 12. So our values of a, we have an invisible 1, b is also an invisible 1, and c is negative 12. So our key numbers must multiply to 1 times negative 12, which is negative 12, and add to 1. So think about that for a moment. Pause if you need. What two numbers multiply to negative 12 and add to 1? 4 and negative 3. Now notice we're using the variable y here, so this has to be 4y and negative 3y. So we've got y and y plus 4 minus 3. So our factors are y minus 3, y plus 4. And it's very easy to check. Remember if you were to go back and multiply each of these numbers, right? They should multiply to what's inside, but then what's inside should add up to your original product. So I do want you to try these two on your own, but for number one, I will get you started. So A is 5, B is negative 18, C is 9. We know that the first term and last term are diagonal, so 5x squared is diagonal from 9. So I will leave it up to you to figure out this box and this box. Go ahead and pause to try both of these, and then you can unpause once you've tried, and I will share the answers with you. All right, so our key numbers have to multiply to 45, since 9 times 5 is 45, and add to negative 18. That would be negative 15x and 3x. Sorry, negative 3. So our factors, 5x and x, negative 3, negative 3. So number 1, 5x minus 3 times x minus 3. And for number 2, A is 1, B is 12, C is 36. So we must multiply to 36 and add to 12. Oh, that makes our two numbers 6 and 6. So our factors are p plus 6 and p plus 6. And a shorthand way to write this would be p plus 6 quantity squared. So your assignment for Wednesday or your assignment for Monday, depending on if you're A day or B day, will be the circled practice questions.